Alright everyone, welcome to Deep Dives with Dogs. Today's topic is about the First Battle of Cold Harbor. The battle ends in a Southern victory. It'll be under Robert E. Lee, and it'll drive the Union forces back to Chickahominy? I can't pronounce that river. Chickahominy, that's what I'm saying. Chickahominy, sorry. River, the southern side of it. Um, it is one of the many victories, you could say, of Robert E. Lee. Uh, a lot of these battles, especially this is 1862 when this battle happens. So, first one, not the second, or any subsequent, but a lot of these victories for the South, there were people in the Southern government that started to get kind of drunk with victory, if you know what I mean. They had this idea. Now, Lee had it kind of at first, but he kind of quickly understands, like, nah, no, it's not going to win this way. But a lot of the Southern leadership had this idea that, hey, if we win these big victories, we'll win the war, and well, that will be good. Especially early on, this was a big thought that people had, that they would win the war if they had these big sweeping victories. But anyone that studies this war fully understands the South was not playing to win. They were playing to survive. So if they wanted to, quote unquote, win, they had to just survive the Union, not necessarily win against the Union. So they could, like let's say the Union wins battles, but they don't really get anything from the battle. They just win a tactical victory. They don't necessarily get any southern land, anything like that. Technically, that's a win for the South, because the South was able to survive. Yeah, they lost the battle, but they're winning their survival. And so you have a lot of these victories by Lee, where it's a great victory and it pushes the Union back, all this, but it doesn't actually move forward the Southern lines. It was never going to. The South, I mean, let's just be honest here. The South was never going to win this traditionally. The Union has something like 4 times the population, much more industry, and just much more availability of continued fighting. The South just doesn't. It just doesn't have that. And it comes very apparent, honestly, obviously in the later stages of the war when it's like, they're not necessarily doing the best on supplies and things like that. And then you have Sherman going through his march to the sea. I'm gonna pick up and move mayhem here. There's something there I don't want to get near. Ugh, there we go. But when the March to the Sea by Sherman, you can see a lot of the destruction, and it really hampers the Southern lines. So it really works out, you could say. But the South will suffer this, and you'll have the Battle of Cold Harbor. The Union will be fully surprised, basically. And just to be honest, the Union had some incompetent generals at this point. Some of them, that's not really their own fault, just kind of maybe people around them, or they knew they weren't ready for the position, and the image of Burnside comes to mind when I think of that. Ambrose Burnside did not want the position, not at all. He was better small-time commander, not big army commander. But Burnside knew, but yeah. You have a lot of these incompetent Union generals, and they just kind of do really awful techniques. And it really shows Lee's expertise. Lee is a very typical Napoleonic era guy, but obviously this is not the Napoleonic era no more. This is much later, but he understands those tactics. A lot of those guys learned those tactics at West Point. That's kind of the funny thing. A lot of these guys all went to West Point on the battlefield. Lee, Grant, Sherman, like I said, all went to West Point, so they all learn these tactics. And so that's why Lee, when you have a more competent general come in, like George Meade or obviously Ulysses Grant, they understood the tactics. You know, Lee's not pulling out anything super crazy, nothing like that. But when you have incompetent generals, you get the battles of the First Cold Harbor, where the Union gets fully surprised and they get kind of just beat back in such a kind of ridiculous way, in a way that should not have happened, but it does because of the people in charge. And it really goes to show, you know, certain people like McClellan, McClellan, oh, he's maybe a great person to his soldiers and things like that. He's a terrible freaking general. He really was. And kind of a rude person, too, which is surprising for someone that loves their soldiers so much, but what can you do? But that's going to do it for this video. If you guys like the video, leave a like. If you have any ways I can improve these videos, leave a comment down below. I always appreciate your feedback. And as always, subscribe. It really does help out the channel. Thank you.